Rings of Power, Episode 3, and we have good news! We don't have any hobbits. Bad news, we've still got all the rest of it. So we start off with potentially a little bit of a time hop, because we're still with the Númenóreans and Elendil in particular, at the point at which they're trying to go back to Númenor, which I thought they'd already done. But anyway, okay, slight time hop. We're seeing Elendil fighting with Beric. Remember, the horse that is named after the horse that was given a name in the Lord of the Rings film, because remember? Anyway, the named horse Beric is deciding he doesn't want to go. He's bossing Elendil around. He's not letting anyone tell him what to do. He wants to be released. So, because this is what you do now, horses have agency. You need to let them do what they want to do. They let the horse go. The horse then goes and gets his way to Mordor. Orcs catch him, and they then get killed. Well, one or two of them do anyway, while the horse escapes. Then somehow Beric manages to lose the rope that the orcs have put around his neck. You know how those horses with their amazing opposable hooves that mean that they can take things off their necks just like that. Anyway, he loses the rope from around his neck, and then he manages to find Isildur, who's been captured by spiders. Because remember, spiders in Mordor? And there's a big spider, remember? Because there's big spiders in Mordor. And of course, Isildur escapes, because unless you've not seen the films, you know that Isildur is right at the very beginning in the big battle where he chops off Sauron's ring. So of course he's going to escape. There was never any doubt. Unless you're never watching Rings of Power, or unless you're someone who's a big fan of Rings of Power. Oh. This thing is brain rot. Anyway, Isildur escapes, and now we have to see how he's going to get back to Númenor. Speaking of Númenor, we're now back on Númenor, and we are with Elendil, who is he's mourning the loss of the king, and Girlboss daughter appears and chastises him. So he's been told what to do by a horse. He's now getting told off by his daughter. Isn't that fantastic? Elendil, this great character that they could have built up to be this amazing hero, is just pathetic. And then we have the Battle of the Women. Miriel turns up. She's blind. She's there to mourn the death of her father. And a mother of one of the soldiers comes up and she berates Miriel. And then they hug it out and everything's fine. But the bit where she's chastising Miriel, possibly the best bit of the series. Calling it now, best bit of the series. I don't think it will get better than that. We then have Miriel and Pharazôn having a chat about Miriel's coronation, and Pharazôn wants her to wear red, whereas Miriel wants to wear white. And then we have a scene in a tavern where Pharazôn is with all those who are supporting him, and we discover that Elendil's daughter is not a faithful member of the faithful. She's a Pharazôn supporter. She's basically one of the king's men. Well, king's people. Or is she a king's woman? Or would that mean that she's not got agency and she's owned by the king, and therefore, who knows? Either way, she supports Pharazôn. And we also discover that she's stolen a Palantir. Yes, this character that doesn't exist has not only chastised Elendil and made him look pathetic, she's spoken against Miriel, saying that it's her fault that Isildur is dead, though he's not dead, but anyway. And she's now stolen a Palantir, and she's supporting Pharazôn. I hate this character so much. We're back with the orcs in Mordor, and Adar is talking to them about how they're going to deal with Sauron now that it appears he has returned. And he's trying to put their mind at ease when they thought that they killed him. Well, it's all fairly pathetic, really. Made even more pathetic by the fact that we then see, once Adar walks away, the orc he was talking to goes and cuddles his missus and their baby. We're supposed to not like the orcs for a reason. They are the embodiment of evil. And yet here we have them trying to make it look like we should have some sympathy for the orcs. This is all about shades of grey, no black or white. That's not how Tolkien wrote it. These guys are evil. We have no sympathy for them. This show is crap. Then a moment of slightly more acceptable baseness. A troll turns up, and not just turning up, he turns up with the head of an orc. That troll knows how to deal with orcs. That troll knows the value of orcs, i.e. nothing. They are just plain, simple evil. Problem is, he's evil as well, so it's only slightly based. But still. Troll turns up, and Adar is trying to get him to be on side with them so that they can go and fight the rest of Middle-earth. It's probably going to be all downhill from here. Okay, we now have the dwarves in Eregion. The offer they had at the end of last season, they've clearly decided to go and find out about it. So Durin goes with Disa because, of course, Disa's got to be involved. And Celebrimbor offers them rings to fix their world. I'm assuming there was some kind of conversation beforehand about saying that the light shafts have collapsed, something like that. I've got no idea whether it's in the episode or not. I've lost so many brain cells from watching this that I struggle to retain all the information. Anyway, they make the offer, and once that offer has been made, where they're saying it's in exchange for Mithril, we then have Annatar trying to corrupt Celebrimbor against Gil-galad. I don't think that this would have worked if this was what Tolkien was talking about and Tolkien was creating. These guys are not about being anti-elf. I mean, there's a reason why the kinslayings are held in such kind of separation from normal elf behaviour. Generally speaking, the elves tend to stick together, particularly after the First Age, where all three of the main groups of elves have basically had to clump all together as one grouping there. So the elves of Lindon would not be going in any way against each other. So this is the wrong line to go down. But my guess is this is where we'll end up going as the story progresses. Remember the dead marshes? Remember? Dead bodies floating in water? Doesn't exist, of course, because that doesn't exist until after the end of the battle, just before they siege Mordor at the end of the Third Age. But, of course, These guys have nothing to offer other than member berries of things that have gone by. Yeah. Anyway, we get to Pelargir. It's declared to be an old Númenórean settlement. If you remember back to the first episode, my commentary on that was that there's a bit of an issue with the timeline now, because they declare that Sauron is killed by the orcs, well, killed by the orcs at the beginning of the Second Age, and he then kind of respawns, quite literally kind of looking like Spawn, but he respawns and turns himself into into his human form of Halbrand, and then he goes on from there to get onto the boat where he meets Galadriel, and the timeline all slots together from there. As I said, that's not going to take a huge amount of time. So there's no way that Pelargir can be an old Númenórean site, given that Númenóreans only existed about kind of, was it 50 years, I think? Roughly about 50 years into the Second Age, when they got to Númenor from Middle-earth. And given that there's centuries where they're doing nothing before they start doing their exploration of the coast of Middle-earth, this makes absolutely no sense. But anyway, we're at Pelargir, this old Númenórean site, and we've got Isildur going there, and he's found himself a lady friend, who odds on will be the next girl boss. Certainly she stabbed him in the leg already, so sign of things to come. We also later discover she's got a Mordor tattoo on the back of her neck, but anyway. So she kind of ambushes Isildur, and then she apologises, and she then yanks the knife out from his leg, and then he says, you shouldn't have done that. She then gives him something to tie it up with, and then he gives her a lift on Beric, his horse, who he's now riding to Pelargir. And then, as they're going along, they get ambushed again. And for a man who's already been ambushed once, Isildur's not very smart. He stops, and they get him in this ambush. And he's then saved. Don Lemonless to the rescue, who still can't fire a bow properly. And then we also discover Don Lemonless has lost his lover, his lady lover, the girl boss from the Southrons. She's now dead. Almost the best bit of the series. One down, so many more keep popping up though. Back with the Dwarven family struggle now. I bet you've been waiting for that. Durin apologises to Durin. Yes, Durin the son apologises to his dad, King Durin, and then gives him Celebrimbor's offer. And obviously there's question marks over, they just want the Mithril, all of that. But of course, because we all know that the rings are going to come for the dwarves as well as the humans, now that the elves have got them, well, we know they're going to accept it because, again, the elven rings needed the Mithril, therefore the dwarven rings and the human rings are both going to need it. So there's all this argument about will we, won't we, but they're going to. I don't know what they're trying to do with the whole ring story. The whole point is the rings of power are created. We know they're going to be created, yet they're giving us all this will they, won't they stuff. It's creating tension when there isn't any. Well, sorry, it's trying to create tension where there isn't any, and everyone knows that it isn't there. And I bet these same writers will keep on going next series after that, and nobody's going to learn. Back to Pelargir. dead girl boss's son, Theo, who we're all fairly certain is Lemolus's dad, even though we then get told by Theo that he's not his dad. He declares that he hates Don Lemolus, and everyone who was watching shouted agreement with him. First time, I'm fairly certain we can say the majority of those watching could agree with anything said on this show. Isildur is flirting with the new girl boss that stabbed him in the leg, and gets his leg stitched, and then declares he's going off, and he's going to get some help from Theo, because he's got to save his horse who got nicked from the ambush. He's got to go and save his horse, because of course his horse saved him, so how could he not? He gets Theo to help him, and he walks off without a single limp at all. There was a little bit of limping earlier on in this episode where it was very obvious it just happened, but now, apparently, he's healed really quickly. No explanation. He's just healed. So they go off, and gets his horse back, and then Theo appears to have been got by either an Ent or an ogre. We don't know which, it's just something really big. Nearly there. Very nearly there. Miriel is about to get coronated. Nearly. But it doesn't happen. Apparently, people can moan at her in her own coronation. They can berate her and say things are rubbish, which includes Elendil's girl boss daughter. So she gets all up herself about the Palantir, telling all of them about how that had been the guidance for what had led to the deaths of the Númenóreans in Middle-earth. And just as we're having all of this diatribe, an eagle turns up. Apparently, the eagle turning up was supposed to be a blessing that they're showing upon whoever's the new monarch of Númenor. And all of them are startled, and then Pharazôn, for some reason, decides that it's a good idea to walk towards the eagle. Now, the eagles are the messengers of the Valar. He doesn't like the Valar. So, given that these beings are likely aware that he doesn't like them, there's a good chance he might have actually got a peck, maybe even eaten by the eagle. But no, he thinks that it's a good idea to walk up to the eagle. And then one of his friends, because the eagle doesn't fly away, but Pharazôn's still a fair distance away, Pharazôn's friend shouts out, "The eagle favours Pharazôn," and declares that Pharazôn should be king. And that's where we're left. We don't know if he's become king. We know, according to Tolkien's writings, he will become king. It's interesting they've made it happen quite this early on, given everything that's to come, but hey-ho. And we know that he forces Miriel to be queen. That's going to be an interesting one. I'm wondering whether he'll end up locking her in prison and saying, "You either marry me or you stay here." And she ends up escaping at some point, with Pharazôn having already claimed that they are king and queen and that he's in charge. And they'll end up being a point where she's able to be girl bossy again towards the end. Anyway, Pharazôn has been shouted for as being the king because, of course, that's what happens at a coronation. The soldiers would never silence anyone who declares someone else should be king. No. It's like these people don't even understand how the things they're writing about work. Funny that. And then finally, King Durin goes to Eregion and he takes some mithril with him. And Annatar is the one who puts the mithril in. And I'm guessing from how they're doing it, this is how they say that he's able to have power over the rings that are given to the dwarves and to the to men. It's almost like he closes his eyes and he says a little prayer over them, or does a little bit of magic, something, whatever it is that he's doing. That happens as he puts the mithril in, and then the mithril goes in to create the metal they're going to use to craft the dwarven rings. So there we have it. Episode 3. Definitely an improvement with the lack of hobbits and fake Gandalf. But aside from the odd aesthetic, and people rightly shouting at Queen Muriel because everything that she has done has been bad, regardless of what the lore says from Tolkien's writings, Muriel is the bad guy here. Pharazôn, potentially, you could say, is actually the good guy who should be made the king, because he's clearly thinking about his people. Elendil is just pathetic, as is his son Isildur. His insufferable daughter is completely correct. Muriel was at fault and is the reason why, as far as they're aware, Isildur is dead. And so we have a complete transformation of what should be seen and what we're actually seeing. The strong are weak and pathetic. The good are evil and the evil are good. And this is possibly making things worse than season 1. Who saw that one coming? Anyway, guess it's time to watch episode 4 now.